Hello everybody and welcome to the Big Fire. I was getting a lot of requests for this one, so it's finally time to show you how it's done. Also, I'm going to be giving you the hip file and the nuke file for you to test this out on your own. I assume what people liked with this one is how sporadic it looks. It actually feels like proper fire. Fire is actually quite fast and it moves very aggressively, so I feel like this kind of hit the right spot between all of those elements. So yeah, let's see how it was done. This is the comp, and what we're gonna do is I'll do a high-level overview and then we're gonna do a deep dive on everything. The comp, this was rendered with Arnold, but what I'm gonna be showing you how to do this with Karma. So this is what we get, and then we add some motion blur. Motion blur always helps. This was rendered with motion blur, but just adding just a bit of blur on top really helps, especially because this render has a ton of noise. But when you put some motion blur on top, a lot of that goes away. A bit of color correction, nothing special, just to reduce the contrast a bit, using this great AOV gizmo to just darken the HDR, and then merging on the embers. So the embers are, I was just rendering them separately, adding motion blur on top, even though we don't really need to because they already have motion blur, or we are faking the streaks of motion blur that you would get with embers. So let's see. Honestly, this would have worked without motion blur. Then doing a blue key here on the alpha, you get this. So you do a keyer, plug it in, go here and grab the blue keyer. And what that will give you is you can then brighten just these areas. So blow them out just a tiny bit. And that gives it gives it a bit more punch, but also, I guess, looks a bit more realistic. If not everything is like properly exposed. So that was the thinking, and then some Luma grain on top because it just I like grain. Just makes things look a bit better. And then what I was doing here is just rendering out different compositions for specific areas. So that's when it comes to the comp. It's very simple, straightforward. Let's jump into Houdini. Houdini. Hello there. If this video is of any value to you so far, please consider sharing it to the universe. It really helps us a lot, and we're gonna make more content like this in the future. So if you like Axiom and you like Houdini and you want to see more content like this in the future, it's gonna help us a lot. Cheers. Back to the video. Okay, so we are in Houdini. This is the entire setup. And let's start from the top, shall we? This part is where we do the emitter. This is how the emitter looks like. So it has a few different levels. So let's see, if I disable them, we get, actually, let's do this. So 1 emitter, 2 emitters, and then also the third one. And then once you combine them, you get quite a lot of nice variation. On this side, we have the tiny little noise patterns on the ground, and then you combine all of them, and this is pretty much our emitter. Then this is the fire simulation area. So this original sim was done with Axiom 3.0. This is pretty much the similar setup done with 3.1. And this is another example that is much, much faster, because in the other ones, I'm using 4 substeps. In this one, I'm using 1 substep. Much faster to sim. Actually, I think this one takes like a minute, all of these ones are going to take 5 minutes and are really heavy on the VRAM, but they give you like the ultimate kind of details that you would need. But this one is not bad. So I will show you how all of that works. Then this is where we do our smoke sim. So essentially we just get our low res fire. This is just the temperature of the fire. And then we do a smoke sim on top of that. And this is how the smoke sim looks like. Absolutely nothing special about it. Very simple. And then if we go down the pipe, this is the render area. I'll show you that later. This is just an extra thing if you want your simulations to loop. If you want looping fire, looping smoke, this is the way to do it. Nothing too fancy here. You can explore this on your own. I can talk about it later, but nothing too fancy happening here. And then at the bottom, we have the embers. So we do our low res smoke. We always need velocity. And then we have our low res fire temperature. We combine them, do a post process. So all the fields that are the same here, you can see they get merged. And then we do our embers. Look at those beautiful points. And then we trail them and add them, and then do some color on top and do one version that's super small and one version that's a bit longer, and then polywire, and there you go. Done. Good quality ILM style embers. Good stuff. All right, so let's start at the beginning, I guess. This is the emitter. So how it's done is we do a circle, you create some noise. So I like this because it gives you, you can then do a lot of different variations of this, right? So then I transfer it up just so it's a lot bigger. So you can see it's almost like, it's a big fire. That's why this is called big fire, because this is almost like freaking 20 meters wide, which is quite a lot. But you can do it offset and you're going to get a different type of fire. So this is very easy to do multiple variations. So once we have that, on this side, I just create a density and temperature attribute and then give this a p-scale of 0. Okay, keep that in mind. On this side, I have a sphere. I noise it up and give the sphere a p-scale of 0.02. Then I transfer that attribute. We transferred the p-scale value. And if I copy if I copy a sphere, I'm just going to make it initial size bigger. So we have our points, right? And I'm just deleting a few just so we don't get too many spheres, but I guess we can do this. And with this attribute transfer, we're transferring p-scale 0 and 0.02, and we get something like this. So this has a nice gradual fall off that's happening to absolute nothingness, right? And that essentially gives us this. You can see there's a nice fall off that's happening. If we don't have this, well, if we, something, there we go. This is how you can control this, all right? Very simple stuff. And all this has is a attribute noise that is animated, and it's doing this. So fire usually comes in, it has a natural flow to it. So it's gonna, when it gets hotter, some areas of the fire are going to be hotter, some are going to be colder. And if they're hotter, so in this case, this area is going to be colder and this is going to be hotter, this area will rise up faster and it's going to contribute to the temperature and the buoyancy. And that's how you just get more organic shapes. And you also get those aggressive shapes that we need from fire. So then we have another one that's a bit faster, a bit more sporadic. Again, just playing just adding layers. Usually creating effects is all about adding multiple layers, and that makes it look more complex. And then another one that's super small and just, yeah, it helps, you know. You can experiment with this. This is just what got me to this result. But once you have the file, you can then do whatever you want and experiment with this. So then we combine them. And for some reason, oh, here we go. Yeah, yep. So we combine them here. You can also add a point velocity. Keep in mind, you do it while we are still on the points, and that's going to look like this. In this case, I was not using velocity in the sim, but you totally can. And then you rasterize everything. You get something like this. On the other side, this is for the tiny little noise patches. Those are these guys, the small ones. And that just gives it scale. And it's more interesting, just gives it a more interesting art direction as well. But it does help with the scale to have like some really tiny flames in comparison to the big one. You could also simulate this separately and simulate this part separately and then just combine them. Because sometimes these ones, they require a much higher division size. The resolution, I mean, of the voxels needs to be quite high for these ones to work. And that's why these, the sims in this case, usually take like 5 minutes, which is quite a lot, I guess, especially for Axiom simulation times. But this one is super fast, so you'll see that soon. But just so you know, in this case, I combined them, I cached them out, all good. Simple. Then on the simulation side, I just put down a collision plane. So it's just going to do a plane collision. Now, for anybody who's not super familiar with Axiom, I will try to recreate this one from scratch. But we also have a Axiom fundamentals course that you can check out. And I kind of go through a lot of fire setups there. But keep in mind that the setup and everything below and on top can definitely be used with just the vanilla pyro that comes in Houdini. So everything can be applied to that. So these are the settings for Axiom 3.0. Again, because you're going to be getting the file, you can play with them, but nothing really fancy. I'm not using combustion, just a bunch of disturbances. Sourcing is very simple, and substeps are set to 4. Because sometimes with super fast moving fire, sometimes you do get some bending that's happening, but that's why if you put the substeps to 4, all that is going to go away. And then also the simulation, the timescale is set to 4. Timescale essentially just multiplies everything up by 4. You can do it manually, but this is just a global multiplier for everything, and it's going to make everything move faster. So because this scale is quite big, if I didn't set this to 4, the fire was moving a bit too slow. All right, so this sim is quite heavy in terms of voxels. Like there's a lot of them. You can see like how chugging, how much my viewport is chugging on this. This is super high res, right? But I also have all 3 fields, and we can visualize this with this pyro look. Yep, and it's gonna get slower. Also, my VRAM is completely full, so that doesn't help. Ooh, here we go. All right, sweet. I think just need to, so pro tip, if your VRAM is getting full, just disable this, enable it. It's gonna flush out the VRAM. And yeah, that's the original sim. That's literally the simulation. It's the same cache from this render. Looks like this. Super slow now. We are approaching a lot of voxels. So let's see. So this sim itself has 150 million active voxels. And then obviously when we add the pyro look, it's gonna create a few more, and especially because I'm creating the CE, the color field here as well. So super detailed. And this is how the shader looks like. You creating this curve. So we get the nice dark pockets that we usually get with fire. And one of the tricks here is actually using smoke. If I disable smoke, sometimes fire looks very cool on its own. But here's the trick. It's very hard to composite fire because here it might look cool. And when you view it on a black background, it's still going to look very cool. But then you start compositing it, putting it into a shot. And all of a sudden, you'll see that it kind of looks transparent and it's hard to composite it in. And then you have to do a bunch of tricks to make it look good. What you can do is just render it with some smoke. In this case, it worked when I increased the density super high and just put smoke to almost like black color. And that will fill those black pockets. And it's actually going to help if you composite this into footage. This will still be black because this is actual density. Maybe this is a bit extreme, but that's how I was able to get this super crunchy, crispy chicken type quality happening in this render. So this is the trick. This is it. All right. So as you can see, this is super slow. This one is, I just recreated that setup with 3.1 and it still has a bunch of voxels. So for fire, you do need to be you need a lot of voxels for it to work. Actually, this one has even more voxels. But it's still going to take only 5 minutes-ish to render, to simulate on my 3090. One trick, a lot of people I saw, if they're upgrading from 3.0 to 3.1, if you go to Axiom, there's this thing you can enable to switch between versions if you have both of them installed. I believe it's this. So this hides or always show. And that way you can switch between the Axiom versions, just like so. When you do that, it's going to change a few things because you can see in 3.0, all of the tabs here are active. When you go to 3.1, only the ones that are checked are going to be active here, and the solver runs a bit differently. There was a bit of a restructure on the inside, so you will have to change your values to get back to your to whatever you had at 3.0. But 3.1 is just faster in general and better, so I advise you to do it. All right, so let's see how we can get this. I believe this is going in the other direction. So this fire, I do have a preview here. It's this guy. Oops, that was a lot of previews. But let's see if we can recreate this. And these are the other previews that are very slow to make. This is the 3.1 fire. And this is the 3.0 fire. 3.1. Maybe this is a bit, goes a bit higher up. And then let's try to do this one. But this one is super fast to simulate. Well, not that fast. Hello there. If this video is of any value to you so far, please consider sharing it to the universe. It really helps us a lot, and we're gonna make more content like this in the future. So if you like Axiom and you like Houdini and you want to see more content like this in the future, it's gonna help us a lot. Cheers. Back to the video. Still gonna be pretty fast. When I'm testing fire, I do like to test at quite high res, but if you cap it at like 20, 30 million voxels. So you can just start seeing the details. That's pretty, that's a good place to be in. So yeah, like 30 million where we are right now. And we have density and temperature in this case. Another pro tip when you are testing out things. So obviously when you look at fire, it's good to look at it through the pyrobake, but you can kind of see the shapes, right? You know, they're not gonna be exactly the same, but you can kind of see them here. So what I like to do is just disable everything, but just keep on the density, and that will make the simulations even faster because it doesn't have to cache out the other fields and write them to disk, because the writing to disk part is actually slowing things down a bit, obviously. So yeah, that's just a faster way of testing it out. So, but you can also, you know, we can preview it here quite fast as well. So the way, well, let's try one, right? So let's do an axion solver. Let's see if we can make something decent from this. So just gonna plug this into the source shapes as a glider, and then this is our emitter. In this case, to make things go a bit faster. So this is our emitter. You should use the high-res version for your high-res sims. But what you can do is you can low-res it a bit, down-res it, and it's going to be a bit faster. And it's going to be faster for you to do iterations, which is always, in my opinion, the most valuable thing is to do fast iterations. So let's see. Garbage. We get absolute garbage. So, all right. First off, output, disable everything. Go to solver, put this to 16-bit. It's not going to change anything, but your files are going to be smaller. You will not see any difference. Next thing we can do is increase the temperature. So that's a bit better. And then let's add wind. I'm going to put 3.5 wind. That's going to make things go to the left a bit. And then what we're going to do is increase the time scale to 4. So now everything is multiplied by 4. That's cool. But see this solver frame step. This means that this is going to be affected by the time scale. In this case, I don't want that. I want this to be separate and not affected by the time scale, which means that, so if you leave it to solver, if I put this to 10, the dissipation is going to be much higher. So, which is maybe something you want. You know, this also looks like fire. So that might work. But in this case, I want this to be not affected by that. All right, still doesn't look exactly like fire. Put this to 4, maybe increase the... Did I increase it or decrease it? Yeah, maybe 3.5, something like that. Kind of looks okay. I had 4 here as well. Let me just quickly check. Yep, 4. I mean, you can try 5 just to see if it... 5 will essentially make the wind stronger, and also the buoyancy is going to go up a bit higher. Now we can check our disturbances, and oops, here we go. Complete disaster. So you can see with timescale, our disturbances are going to be affected as well, right? So just lower that bad boy down quite a lot. It's still too much. 1. It's probably still a bit too much. Maybe add another turbulence, and also turbulence. I usually put this to fast per lane because it's going to be faster to compute. And let's see. Put the speed. Oops, not that high. Maybe to 8. And then the second one, I will make this a lot bigger. And then maybe put this to 6. So this turbulence, if you test it out, it should just blow things up quite aggressively up and down. Actually, it's not that bad. So it should feel a bit aggressive. let's see. So we need to go down to 3 to actually then start seeing the details. Otherwise, the disturbances feel quite aggressive. So looks okay. Maybe put this to 7, this down to 3. You can check on confinement if you want. Sometimes it gives a nice tiny detail. We can get more details out of that like that. Buoyancy, put buoyancy to a bit higher, maybe more wind. So it's gonna, with more buoyancy, it's gonna lift higher and also faster. So it's gonna feel like it's going faster. So we have something like that. Let's do a cache just to quickly preview it. And what I forgot was we do need temperature now, because we do want to preview it with the pyrobake. And at these, I mean, these are quite still low resolutions, right? Well, what is that? Well, I guess we are already using 40 million voxels, so it's not nothing, but in comparison, the other ones were in the hundreds of million. So punch this in. Let's see if this is too much. Whoa, 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 whoa. Calm down. So 4, 5, maybe go down a bit with the smoke. Maybe 6. And let's do a quick preview. So I know it kind of looks spotty here, and it feels like there's a lot of noise. Where are we previewing? Yep. But all of that gets, it's going to go away in the render, and most of that goes away if you add motion blur and stuff like that. So it's just a matter of testing. But you can see that, you know, we made a decent, I guess, looking fire. Now it's just up to tweaking this, making it a bit faster, making it a bit slower, also making the sim more high res. So let me try do 2. And also I think I liked more turbulence. Put this to 1, put this to 2. Yeah. Actually, let's see. Let's put this to 50. Just want to see what happens. Go back to 5. This is how I'm testing. I just see how it's influencing it. So that's a bit much, right? 50 is too much, but we know it's working. So let's back to 10. So see, I'm looking at these like woof, woof, like big whooshes, and that makes fire more interesting. It's pretty good. Let's do a preview like that. Just so you guys can see, this is how I'm thinking when I'm doing fire. Also, I'm doing the biggest sin ever. I'm not looking at references right now, which is something that I would always recommend for you guys to check is references. So because our turbulence is quite high, we are getting some noise at the bottom because it's colliding. So I'm thinking go back to 5. It's not going to be visible in the final render, I think. But also what we can do is lower the collision to be minus 0.5. And that helps a bit. So it's not, I think we were cutting off our emitter a bit because our emitter is, yeah, it is a bit in the ground. So we were cutting it off just a tiny bit. Maybe it's a bit too high now. Maybe don't go as crazy with the buoyancy and maybe increase the dissipation. Yeah, it's a bit high, but honestly, with all the smoke later, and also this is still a mid-res sim for the high res one, yeah, you do have to wait like 3-5 minutes for it to complete, just because Fire needs to be super high res. But this gives me that same kind of feeling that I was getting here. You know, it's very similar. Similar vibes. Yep, it's pretty good. All right. So I'm gonna leave this to you guys to experiment and do your simulations on your own. But yeah, just keep in mind when you actually then start doing your finals, you will have to go to like 1.5, and that will slow things down. I can quickly do one. And also I will go to the high res emitter, because that's gonna help a bit. All right, 60 frames, that's enough. 3 minutes, not the worst. Let's see what we got. Ooh, it's a bit better. Super high rate. Is that 250 million? What is happening? But yeah, that's an okay sim, I think. It has an okay amount of details, so yeah, looks pretty good. Looks decent. That would probably work. I'm not going to preview it because it's going to be super slow, but that's what you get. So cool. Experiment this on your own. Let's continue. So after you have your sim done, there's a bunch of things that we need to do. Oof, yeah, this one's gonna chug. Oh my god, sweet lord. The first one, after you have your sim done, I'm gonna go more towards the beginning because it's gonna be faster. Okay, not that much faster. Turn this off. You need to, I'm gonna go down here. Don't worry. So you put down your pyro bake, and you do the curvies. You do the curvies like so. These are roughly the values that you want. I don't know. Oh, okay. I was baking this for Arnold. I don't need to bake this anymore. Silly Arnold. So you do this, and then you go to quick setups and create render stage, and then you click on default and then accept. That will create this. So it's gonna already link everything where it should be. I'm gonna go a bit forward in time now, so it looks a bit better. Yeah, I guess. So it's gonna give you this, but obviously I modified this. Yeah, sweet. No, I modified it, but you will get your Fire in, and it will already create the render geometry settings. It's gonna link it up automatically, and it's gonna create a material library that's also linked to your Pyrobake, which is very convenient. So in this case, I wasn't changing anything on this side. So you get your Fire, and if you render it, it's gonna be fiery. I changed the volume velocity to 3, just because I felt like it needed a bit more motion blur. What I did change was I set this to /fire, and that will create, if you go to the Orion workshop, I go through a lot of these Solaris tips and tricks that you can do. But yeah, essentially this will create this .fire thing. You can type in whatever you want, and it's going to create this naming convention, .fire. And here, the material path, I created a material path /fire, just so it's a separate material path, because otherwise, if it's not separate, when you're merging them, because we have a separate one here on the left, it will combine them, and you don't want that. And then on the left, we have our smoke, bringing it in the same way, applying the shader and combining them, right? So here, what you can do is if we go into the material library, on the smoke, we can use the scatter to fake the fire illumination. That's going to be the fastest. If you want to do it for real, you can go to the render settings here and say yes to treat as light. And now your fire is going to be a light. It's going to look better. It's going to be much slower. So I'm like, hell no. And go back here, enable scatter. You can see it looks a bit more janky. It's not exactly the same, but you know what? It's good enough for most cases. Then you sublayer them together. And so this is the fire and this is the smoke. Okay. I will go through all of this in a second, just so you know how this is created. Just give it a second to load, because these are big VDB files. So this is where we have our fire. And then what I do is I don't really need density. I only want temperature. So what I do is I remove the temperature, rename it to density. You can then remap your density values if you want. And then I combine my temperature, velocity, and density here. Do a VDB resample. And this is how this looks like. If you want, you can remap your density, or in this case, your temperature values. And all of this is going to be your smoke emitter. So we are using our fire to emit our smoke. And that will create, first off, we're using the same velocities from our fire. And we're also using the temperature from our fire where the smoke would actually then be emitted. And that will give us something like this. And it doesn't have to be a super high res emitter. That's why we are VDB resampling it down. After that, we just plug this emitter into a new axiom. So you can see this, right? And it's going to be using all of the good stuff that you get from your fire. Nothing special here, nothing special here, except I was using pull on the velocity. That just gave me the most proper looking velocity without it being too extreme. So if I go to add, in some cases this was pushing the smoke too much, almost like unnaturally. So you can see like it's really going, and it became super mushroomy, and then it's, you know, you have to deal with all of that. So if you put this to pull, it will not go as crazy, but it's still going to respect how fast the velocity of the fire is moving. And it's just gonna, in this case, this was the setting that worked for me the best. The smoke, nothing special, I just turned everything on. And the smoke is not the main thing here, so don't worry about it. You need velocity only if you are, if you're gonna be rendering motion blur. Otherwise, you can turn all of this off. And it's gonna be way faster to preview, and it's gonna be way faster to simulate and to cache out. So after you do cache it out, you're gonna get something like this. Now this smoke is not the best smoke ever made. It was just, it did the job. So, but I don't particularly like it, but it was okay. And here what I did was another pyro bake just to see where the temperature illumination would be happening. And then again, quick setups, create render stage default, except it's gonna do this. Okay, the reason why I did this was because then I went inside of here. You can see this is the default setup it gives you. Stop the render. And then I just copied this and I copied it into the previous setup that I was showing you before. Okay, so it's just a small little shortcut. So this is the main render where I copied everything from here. Cool, sweet. So once we have our smoke, I do another VDB resample, cache that out. So we have another low res version of the smoke. And we use this for our embers. So in this case, I have our smoke, we have our temperature fire, combine them, pyro process to flatten all the fields. Not sure why I needed this, but maybe it just wasn't picking, maybe the velocities were not properly picking everything up. And the, honestly, I'm not sure, but I guess I did need it for some reason. Maybe it helped with the pop advect. Don't remember at this second, but VDB activate, blasting out just the temperature, remapping it a bit, and then to do this, and then the remap essentially just creates a hollow temperature in this case. Because if you don't do it, it's going to scatter it all over the place, but I only wanted to scatter it kind of on the outside. And then, yeah, you scatter points. From here, we have our velocity, right? Velocity. And using an attribute from volume, I copy the velocity back to the points. And that will give you velocity. That doesn't look proper. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, it helps. Yeah, that's how it's actually going to work. So do a blast so you only have velocity. Otherwise, you just need to do it here. So now it's going to work. But it's going to be faster if you blast it. So velocity, that's how that's how you copy your velocity from volumes to points. And then you do a pop network. Also, we're still plugging in the velocities into the second input for our pop advect by fire. And yeah, you get points that are advected by the velocity coming from our fire and our smoke, because if you remember, we combined them. Then I do a pop force, just a lot of one for big amplitudes, big swirly sizes, and one for small swirly sizes. A pop drag, so it's a bit more, so it's not as chaotic. Pop drags and all of that you have to adjust based on your scene, how big your fire is, how fast you want your particles to move, and then a pop effect using the update velocity in this case. Everything else is stock. So here we go. This is these are the points that we get. And then deleting a few of them. I feel like something is slowing my viewport down quite a lot. Okay, so I restarted Houdini because, yeah, it felt like something was super slowing the viewport down because it was lagging on just simple points. So I don't know what that was. But yeah, then we delete a few points just using IDs, random IDs, deleting it here. And if you're deleting by IDs, you don't have to worry about any poppings because every point has a unique ID. Time warping and then trailing. You need to time warp because when you cache and if you don't cache the substeps, you need to just get all the in-between goodness with a time blend. So you get this, and that means that you get nice curvature coming from your points, adding them based on ID. And then we do a CD and P scale ramp. The CD ramp is, so we divide age by life, and that will give us a normalized age. You plug that into the CD ramp. So the age, you can see when they die, they go from super bright to yellow to orange and then black, and then they die, right? And then this is for the P scale. You can then multiply your P scale. So when they die, based on the age, they're going to get smaller. And when they're more alive in the beginning, they're going to be a bit bigger. And you can see that when you actually use a polywire. You can see with this power, this is where we are controlling the P scale. So I put this to 3. Some of the lines are going to be super, super tiny, super thin. And then when right before they die, they're going to almost disappear into nothingness because we are multiplying it with the age, right? So this is the ramp P scale that is being multiplied down. And then you can also resize this. But you can see everyone is going to be go to complete 0 when they die off. And then a classic flow noise on top of that, just a basic simple anti-aliased flow noise, adding it to position like that just gives it a bit more interest to the sparks like that. On the right, we do the same, but I just keep way more points, trail them, and then I just keep them a lot smaller. So the trail was, these ones are longer, these ones are super tiny, and then you combine them to get a good variety of different embers. And then polywire, and that's it. That's pretty much it. And then I copied this path, just control copy. And if we go back to our render, we go to this guy, go inside. It's going to take a while. Yep. Here we go. And we bring them in. So SOP import, you copy this path, not twice. Oh, just once. Copy it, call it /embers, just so when we get it here, it's under component /embers. Do a basic embers simple principle shader and just set this to use point color and set the emission to 1. Sublayer it together. On the left, we have this grid, which is literally a grid with a UV applied to it. And then in the material library, I used a Megascans concrete mix material that looks, let me go to the render, but I'll just disconnect the other parts. Disconnect. There we go. So it looks like that. Just has some variety. You can use whatever you want, honestly, but this just has some variety when it comes to, I'm just using a specular roughness and then a normal map, and the specular roughness looks like this. So it just gives it a bit of variation, but it's super not important for this tutorial. This is just for, so it looks a bit nicer for the presentation purposes, right? And then you plug this here. And it is going to be a bit slow. The camera set it to 80, point it down a bit. It's cool if you use a HDR. I'm just using I always, for almost every project, I use this Sky 18 HDR. And it just gives me this blue greenish tint that I like. It usually looks quite cinematic. But you can see this one is a bit slow to render. It might be interesting to see how this would look with Karma XPU, because that would be much, much faster. It's going to be probably, well, see, I'm not even rendering motion blur at this point, but it might be faster if we, honestly, if we go to Just divide this by 2. Just so we see something. So yeah, because we're using the smoke that we got in the fire itself, you can see we get these dark pockets, and that creates that crispiness. And then this looks okay, but then you need to enable motion blur to get a much nicer shape to the fire. And then in compositing, I also added additional motion blur on top. But you can see, you enable motion blur, it gets a bit slower to render. Just want to see if it works properly. And put this to 10. Just want to see if it makes a huge difference. Yeah, it does work. Okay. Yeah, maybe even 4, because you do want these streaky kind of lines happening in the fire. And sometimes that's just, yeah, just you need to increase the motion blur a bit. But yeah, I think that's it, guys. I think we went through the whole setup. You can play on your own. I would advise you to maybe do a smaller fire. It's going to be much faster to sim, much faster to render. And then once you're comfortable with smaller fires, you just scale up to the 2 big fires. But yeah, that's it. That's how this was done. Yeah, it's pretty much this. And then yeah, with compositing, you put some more, some more motion blur. Maybe a bit of glow would also help in this case. And yeah, that's it. Just the right angle and you're good to go. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I have a bunch more fire tutorials that I can do in the future. So let me know if you want to see those as well. But otherwise, we have a bunch of exciting things that we're going to be adding to the tutorial and workshop library. So stay tuned. All right, bye everybody.